April 15, 2023, Jacksonville, Florida. Stephen Raxton stepped out of prison after 18 months, heart full of hope. He was finally coming home to his wife, Elizabeth, and the son he had never held. A new chapter awaited, a life of love, family, and healing. But the moment he cradled his newborn son for the first time, something felt off. As he gazed down at the baby, his eyes locked onto a birthmark, dark and oddly shaped, just beneath the child's left ear. The mark felt all too familiar, one he had seen before, and it sent a chill down his spine. What was it doing there? The joy of reunion suddenly turned into confusion and unease. Questions began to creep into Stephen's mind. Was everything really as it seemed? Or had the very foundation of his happiness been built on a lie? What started as a moment of joy turned into a devastating journey of betrayal, shattered trust, and a dark secret that no one saw coming. Welcome to True Crime Story Archive. This is the twisted, tragic story of Stephen Raxton's return home, a journey that would lead him into a nightmare. Stay tuned as we uncover the truth behind his shocking reunion, and don't forget to subscribe for daily updates on the darkest true crime stories. Stephen Raxton's story didn't begin with a life of luxury or privilege. Born in Jacksonville, Stephen lost his mother at a young age, and his father worked multiple jobs to support Stephen and his two younger siblings. The absence of their mother left a void, but it also forged an unbreakable bond between the siblings. They learned to lean on each other, navigating the challenges of life with resilience and determination. Stephen's father taught him valuable lessons about responsibility and perseverance. Despite the hardships, Stephen was determined to create a better future. He found solace in his friendships and threw himself into his studies, hoping that education could be his escape from a life that had been defined by struggle. It was during these years that Stephen met Elizabeth. Their connection was immediate. Elizabeth wasn't just another face in the crowd. She had a presence, warmth, kindness, and a light that drew Stephen in. Their relationship quickly blossomed, built on shared values and mutual respect. By June 2019, Stephen and Elizabeth were married. The life they envisioned together was one of love, stability, and family. They were ready to face life's challenges together, and for a while, everything seemed perfect. Stephen worked hard as a construction manager, and Elizabeth balanced her career with nurturing their home. They talked about their dreams of having children and building a future, a family to call their own. Everything was falling into place. But in the background of their seemingly perfect life was Elliot Brown. Stephen and Elliot had been inseparable since childhood. They grew up together, and their bond was strong, built on years of shared memories and mutual respect. Elliot had always been there for Stephen, but as Stephen and Elizabeth's relationship grew stronger, Elliot's own life was less certain. Elliot had struggled with commitment in his relationships, leaving him emotionally scarred. His past was marked by failed relationships, including a messy breakup with his long-term girlfriend, and a short but intense affair with another woman, Anna. These experiences left Elliot hesitant to open up emotionally, but he often looked at Stephen's marriage with Elizabeth and admired the life they had built. Elliot, despite his charm and easy smile, often felt like something was missing in his own life. Their friendship had always been strong, but as Elliot watched Stephen's life with Elizabeth grow, there was an unspoken tension. Could Elliot find what Stephen had? Could he ever have the stable, loving relationship that Stephen shared with his wife? This tension, though never spoken aloud, began to eat away at the foundation of their friendship. In October 2021, Stephen's life took a sharp turn. He had been working tirelessly to build a future with Elizabeth, dreaming of the day they would finally start a family. But everything changed with a single traffic stop. What seemed like a routine interaction turned into a nightmare when Stephen was arrested on a nonviolent weapons possession charge. Although the charge itself was not severe, it was enough to strip Stephen of his freedom. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison, a decision that would halt all the plans he had made for the future. The timing couldn't have been worse. Elizabeth had been trying to conceive, and the two had already begun navigating doctor visits and supplements with the hope of welcoming a child into their lives. This period of their life was supposed to mark the beginning of a new chapter. Instead, Stephen was suddenly thrust into an environment that stripped away the possibility of being with Elizabeth during one of the most important moments of their lives. Stephen's heart ached as he realized how much time he would miss with Elizabeth, and how far away his dream of starting a family now seemed. The months behind bars felt endless. He spent his days in prison thinking about the life they were supposed to have. He wrote letters to Elizabeth, expressing his longing and planning for a future they would eventually share. Every piece of paper he sent home, every sketch he made of the nursery, and every letter full of hope were a lifeline, something to hold on to while he was locked away. Despite the confinement and hardship of prison, Stephen's mind never strayed from the hope of his family. He found solace in his dreams of holding his child for the first time, of finally being a father. While his life was paused, the rest of the world continued. His love for Elizabeth and his desire to start a family were his guiding lights. Then, in the midst of this separation, the unexpected happened. Elizabeth called Stephen with news that would lift his spirits. She was pregnant. It was the news Stephen had been waiting for, the news that gave him something concrete to look forward to. It felt like the universe was offering him a lifeline, a reason to stay strong, a reason to endure the months of isolation in prison. In the weeks that followed, Stephen shared the joy of the pregnancy with his fellow inmates. He wrote letters to Elizabeth, sketching out ideas for the nursery and crib designs. Each letter was full of excitement and anticipation for the day he would be released, for the day he could finally come home to be with his family. He told everyone around him about the baby on the way, the new life they would soon welcome into the world. The thought of being a father became Stephen's sole focus, the thing that kept him going through the darkest days. Despite the distance, Stephen was able to maintain some connection to Elizabeth through letters, but it wasn't the same as being together. The physical distance between them was difficult, especially for someone who had been used to being actively involved in his relationship. The lack of intimacy and the long stretches of time without seeing his wife took a toll on him. Yet, when he received the news that Elizabeth was pregnant, it gave him a renewed sense of purpose. His excitement was palpable. Around November 2022, just a few months before Stephen's scheduled release, he was granted a rare opportunity, a conjugal visit. This visit, though short, allowed him and Elizabeth to reconnect in a way that letters and phone calls never could. During that visit, they were able to share an intimate moment that was supposed to strengthen their bond. It was a reminder that, no matter the separation, their love was still there. During this brief encounter, Elizabeth shared more details about the pregnancy, and the news of her being pregnant felt real to Stephen, a tangible hope that he could now hold on to. It was during this visit that Stephen and Elizabeth were able to fully reconnect, reaffirming their love for each other. Despite the prison walls, they held on to each other tightly during that time, creating the memory of that moment to carry them through the difficult months ahead. But just as the news of the pregnancy was a bright moment, there were still questions that would soon arise, questions that no one, including Stephen, had anticipated. Elizabeth told Stephen that their baby had been born prematurely, but no one could confirm it. Family and friends who had met the baby were confused, noting that the child seemed perfectly healthy and well, not premature as Elizabeth had claimed. However, no one challenged the story at the time. Stephen, desperate for anything positive to hold on to, accepted the explanation without question. There was no reason to doubt Elizabeth's word at that moment. Later on, hospital records would reveal that the baby was, in fact, full-term and healthy. But for the time being, Elizabeth's story went unquestioned, and Stephen believed that this was the final confirmation that their family was on its way to being complete. However, beneath the surface of this happiness, a quiet doubt began to build in Stephen's mind. Something didn't sit right with him about the timing and the details surrounding his son's birth. As Stephen served out the final months of his sentence, his thoughts were preoccupied with Elizabeth, the baby, and what life would be like when he finally returned home. Yet, the questions surrounding his son's birth and the mysterious timing of Elizabeth's pregnancy began to linger. Doubts that no one voiced, not even Stephen, grew quietly in the back of his mind. But these doubts would soon escalate into something much more troubling. When Stephen was finally released on April 15, 2023, after serving nearly 18 months, he couldn't wait to reunite with his family. The anticipation of holding his newborn son, to share those quiet moments with Elizabeth, was overwhelming. But as Stephen held his son for the first time, something caught his eye: the birthmark beneath his son's left ear. It was dark and thumbprint-shaped, and it immediately reminded him of Elliot Brown. The mark was strikingly familiar, almost identical to the one that had been on Elliot's skin for years. Stephen tried to ignore it. After all, it was just a birthmark. But the more he looked at it, the more it seemed like a sign of something far deeper. The chances of two unrelated people having the same thumbprint-shaped birthmark in the exact same place were incredibly slim. As Stephen stared at his son, a wave of suspicion began to wash over him. Could it be that Elliot was the real father? The more Stephen thought about it, the more the doubts gnawed at him. Why did his son have the same birthmark as his best friend? The love Stephen felt for his son was real, but so was the creeping suspicion that threatened to unravel everything he had worked so hard to build. The days after Stephen's reunion with his family were filled with emotional turmoil. The birthmark haunted his every thought, and soon, the doubt became too much to ignore. He finally confronted Elizabeth about the mark, but she denied everything, insisting their son was his. But Stephen couldn't let it go. The DNA test he secretly arranged confirmed his worst fear. He wasn't the biological father of the baby. The result shattered him, sending him into a spiral of grief, anger, and betrayal. Then, just days later, Elliot Brown was found dead in his apartment, shot 3 times at close range. The investigation quickly pointed to Stephen as the prime suspect. The timing and the DNA results painted a chilling picture. Stephen was arrested, and as the trial began, his defense painted a picture of a man pushed to the brink, driven by the psychological trauma of betrayal and heartbreak. But in the end, Stephen was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 35 years in prison. What would you have done in Stephen's place? Could you have forgiven the betrayal, or would you have been consumed by doubt and anger? If this story moved you, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime stories. Stay tuned for more deep dives into the darkest corners of human emotions, choices, and consequences.